Very good afternoon to everybody. My name is Rajit Mathur. I'm a managing director and partner at BCG. Completely a privilege to be back in person at RAI at the RLS. And just before this panel, I was reflecting back. This is my 10th year at RLS. I did a very similar panel a decade back, and I had actually had Mr. Rafique also on that same panel. So while a lot changes, at least my conclusion is that not too much changes either. The topic at hand is an interesting one. We've again reflecting the journey at RLS for a decade. I would still remember that normally outside you would see many brands displaying a combination of products, not as digital products but as physical products. And today, as you see the RLS and you see a lot of the presentations, they're all about digital products. And that's prompted us to have a session today which is around the new marketing mantra, connect, converse, click. It's a lot in sync with, I think, what most of the topics at RLS this year are with three-word taglines. I think we've got a very, very distinguished panel, and everybody will, as we go around with some questions, introduce themselves. But I will kick it off with the first set of discussions, just going back to the essentials, right? If you were to just go back to B school books and say, what really does marketing do? Is the marketing mantra really changing? Are the objectives, the fundamental objectives of marketing, have they changed just given the way the digital world is evolving? So I'll throw open the first question here to my panelist here, with Namrata. The question really is, Namrata, are you seeing the marketing objectives, especially in retail, changing? That too with the two phenomena of the pandemic, one coming into play and the second one around how digital marketing is actually emerging. And secondly, would you have a view on how much of it is actually consumer behavior-led versus what brands actually are believing that they want to do? So a quick, maybe a 20-second introduction about yourself and then an answer.
Hi, I'm Namrata Ashok Chotrani. I am the CEO with Khadim India Limited, with the second largest footwear brand, retail brand in this country, with the largest presence in the eastern part of the country and with a significant presence in the southern part of the country. In terms of the consumer behavior change that we are seeing, and the way the brands need to react or address that, I'll start first with the hybrid models which are created across industries. The flexibility, either working from home or a few hours in office, or the consumer purchasing online versus preferring to buy from malls, or production houses creating content which is for the theatrical releases or OTT platforms. So hybrid models have become a reality, not only in India, globally. And I think as fast as brands adapt to it, I think it will help them to move forward because the consumers are demanding that. Taking a cue from that is your online business. I think when we look at online, we think of it as seamlessness as providing a service and a product, which basically means that any consumer who possibly walks into a store should have a similar experience as the same as him shopping online. So from our perspective, when the consumer walks into a store, he doesn't find a product or service of their choice or color of their choice or the size of their choice. The product is delivered to them home. So the upsurgence of online has helped us be available in markets where we don't have physical presence. But when we're looking at that, increasing sales, increasing penetration is relatively less tough, I would say. But one has to be very cognizant of the cost of doing business when one is doing online business. Next point, next trend or next consumer behavior that one has to adapt to is value consciousness. The disparity or the inequality, the rich and the poor has only increased in the last couple of years post-pandemic. And, consumers have started demanding deals, some kind of discounts, some kind of packages when they're coming shopping, and you need to provide that to them. So and deals and discounts doesn't necessarily mean to have compromise in quality, because the consumers are very well aware of what they're buying because of the upsurgence of e-commerce and online marketing. When coming to online marketing, the upsurgence of celebrity influencers are only increasing, because consumers have reduced the trusting the regular, celebrities, and they prefer trusting people who they have seen over the time, communicating with them effectively, and they believe that in a product or a service of the celebrity of their choice is talking about is definitely legit. So brands need to adapt to that, and not only on a one-off cases, but maybe integrate with them on a regular basis, so that it's they are talking the language that the consumers want today. So there are a lot of trends that one is seeing, and brands need to adapt to and understand the change in the consumer behavior, so that it's a win-win situation for both.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. And can I then request Sanjay to also share his point of view on the same? Sanjay, the question really is, as you look at your business, just given the way marketing, has moved a lot online, do you think that that's something that's going to be a trend to continue to look out for forward? And do you see combination of investments as well as capabilities on your side increasing in that space?
Yeah, so finally it's the journey from the source to the destination, and probably the medium changes and methodology changes. What I believe is that brands who have started their journey back in today's case, probably a couple of decades back, they have kind of straddled the offline much more than the online. And so the methodology of winning customers offline was very different. Whereas today's times, if I look at pure play D2C brands, they have a very different perspective to many things that used to be very sacrosanct as far as offline brands are concerned. So because touch and feel was always there was always a person behind it. Quality was primary out there. But when I look at a lot of D2C players today, it's more the mechanism, it's more the speed, it's more the value centricity that people are trying to build in their brands, in their offerings. So yeah, from that perspective, if I have to put myself in that space, brands like us and brands like Rafique's brands find it very challenging, not in a negative sense, but it really takes away a lot of your capabilities to think through the whole challenge, because you have to actually balance on both the sides. And yes, currently through online marketing, which I think is going to be here to stay, and it's going to kind of evolve and be a lot more significant part of our budgets. I feel that there is going to be a point at which marketing is going to have to move from just selling to building the brand as well, and today I don't find that happening as much on the online space, because I think everybody's in a hurry, especially the current generation, and the ecosystem that we are finding ourselves in, it's kind of propelling that impatience. It's not allowing people to really look long term, and so somewhere I feel that people who look long term are also looked down upon at times, and if I have to kind of look at or wear a hat which is about the conventional way of looking at life, I think some things will always remain long term from a proposition perspective. So yeah, while marketing, digital and online is very important, it's also the need of the hour. I think at some point of time, it's kind of going to come back into a semblance where, it's going to be a balance between sales and also building a brand alongside, No,
I think that's a great point, Sanjay. And we will talk about that. It's one of the discussion points that we do have for the panel today, which is, can brands be built online, or is it more a tool for commerce? And do we believe that the next generational brands, which are deep rooted in consumer loyalty, are actually going to be built online, or at the end of the day they will stay omni in the true sense? But let me take this take this debate now to Rafique. And the question here really is that have the basics of marketing actually changed in any way in today's world? There've always been the theories of marketing, and given that retail is a lot around experience marketing, where a consumer, once they experience the store or the physical offering, actually becomes a consumer and does not really need advertising in the true sense. But do we see, as a retailer and as somebody who's seen a fair amount of changes in consumer behavior, do you think that the basics of marketing are going to undergo a change?
So obviously, COVID did. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all in person. So yes, COVID brought about a disruption that none of us anticipated, and we could not connect with the customers personally. The brick and mortar was shut down. So obviously, it led to a lot of innovation happening at that time. And we had to somehow find a way to reconnect with our customers, which was very, very important to keep the brand relevant. And it did bring about a lot of innovation, ways in which to reach the customer. We had to do it through WhatsApp, through pop-up stores, through home visits, all different kinds of ways in which we could connect with the customers. Some of these will turn out to be long-term things. So yes, to some extent, marketing and how you reach out to customers has changed because of COVID. Any kind of disruption brings about a lot of innovation. And I think it should be good, because all these innovations have taught us whether to work from home or to reach out to customers when we don't have physical stores. All this is creating a lot of new ways in which how we delight customers, how we reach out to customers, and the way we can even showcase our products in their phones through WhatsApp and all. So yes, a lot of these changes will remain, and definitely I see that these changes, some of them are going to be permanent.
And Amit, let me take the debate to you, because on the left side, I have people in the world of brands, and there is fashion. There are on the other hand, you run large grocery stores, and in grocery it is historically said that as long as stuff is available, it's of low price and good quality, you don't really need any form of marketing per se. But are you seeing some of those essentials being re-questioned in today's world, especially post the pandemic, and especially as we see some of the habits at least temporarily changing?
Sure. So one of the differentiators for La Marche compared to the others also is that for the last 2 years, our stores have not been shut even for a single day, right? Because we were classified as essential services. And also we are different from other retailers because we genuinely believe that value for a consumer is not driven by discounting. 99% of our merchandise in La Marche grocery stores is actually sold at MRP. Right? Now coming to the question really, so I don't think that the basics have actually changed. Neither would the basics change ever. They would be there as strong pillars on which to be able to build growth. However, the way we communicate with our consumers has significantly undergone a change, and this is led by a few trends which are there in the industry. Right? Some of the trends that we are seeing is that the time spent in the stores is actually reduced. Right? The appetite for experimentations has significantly gone down. However, one positive trend to come out of it is that because consumers are interacting with digital platforms, their adoption of any digital displays in store has significantly increased. What this tells us is that for, let's say, something like a new brand, and if I were to pick up an example which might resonate with a lot of people here, in the last 2 years, one of the emerging trends in the food and grocery space has been the emergence of alternate proteins or mock meats as an example. Now imagine this pre-pandemic, typically what would be the case that some of the brands would come up to us, maybe ask for higher shelf space and have promoters talk to the consumer trying to educate them. Post-pandemic, that is not something that is possible because the consumers really don't want to interact and would want to maintain social distancing. So what is the solution for it? Right? The solution for it has been that we've actually come up with large digital screens with intriguing display which catches the attention of the consumer. Then there is product displayed right beneath it so that they don't really have to go searching for it. And if additional details are needed, the brand provides a QR code which directs the consumer to any recipe page or any interactive pages that we would want them to. And subtly kept on one side is also a sample in case they would want to try it. So effectively, this at La Marche is what we call bringing the product experience to life. And that is something which has actually yielded great results for us, right? It might not really be an idea of connect, converse, and click, but it definitely resonates with connect, converse, and pick, which is getting digital to be activated in store. From a result standpoint, the sales have actually grown significantly for all these initiatives that we've taken. And just as a simple measure of success, a lot of brands have come up to us, and all our digital assets in store are booked for the next 12 months, right? So the last part of the question was whether it's something which the consumer, the consumers have actually driven. The answer is yes, and like with any typical change, brands have now hogged on to the bandwagon and are experimenting further with it. But yes, it was initiated by the consumers and not really something that the brands thought of. They are now just taking it to the next level.
And that's very, very insightful. And I think you hit upon two very interesting points. I think there is the first point which you mentioned was around measurement, and I'll talk maybe a little bit about that. But I think the second one is that at the end, that if you see consumer traction, then brands tend to follow it up. Once brands invest behind it, consumers tend to follow it up, and hence it's a upward spiral, with of course consumer-led causality. But let me, I was just reflecting, and 16 years being in consulting business, having worked with many different clients. Marketing was like this mix of a right-brained and a left-brained science, right? I mean, there's a lot which used to be spoken about numbers and consumers, but there was a lot of right-brained discussions around creatives and engagement. And fact of the matter is that there was a lot of qualitative commentary which used to come in to say, is the campaign worked? Is something that we are doing good? Candidly, the math was very, very average behind it. Now, in today's world, when we are talking about so much of digital, I think the next set of questions that I wanted to ask my esteemed panelists were around measurement. We are talking about digital marketing, guzzling budgets. But is the ROI visible, both from a consumer point of view as well as from a financial point of view? And let me just very quickly bring in to take a perspective from Vandana. Vandana, a quick introduction about yourself and Freshworks, and then maybe your response to this question.
Sure, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Vandana Tanna. I'm a regional sales head at Freshworks. My job is basically to interact with a lot of prospective customers, and definitely retail is one of the space which we get to interact with. We get to know that what the customers or the prospects they demand when it comes to a marketing automation platform. The requirements are usually around how do they get the maximum data, how do they prospect the right set of customers, how can they actually bring in the mix of what they are seeing on the floor, the conversations which are happening, how are those data coming into the platform, and how they are being able to target it. Once they have all these information, those dashboards, be it from the post-sales or from the pre-sales perspective, they're able to bring up the analytics around what product or what product mix would be a right would be a right sense, what product mix would make a right sense for to market around within that particular set of sample of the customers. From as far as the measurements are concerned, it is definitely a mix of both when a marketer sits back and thinks, because there's a lot of change which is happening around us, right? And the change is the only constant. While the things which were working for most of the marketers 2 years back, it does not make sense now because of course, because of the ultimate mix that we have, the online and offline ways of doing things. It is still data-driven. A lot of work of marketing is still data-driven, yet a lot of gut feeling comes into picture where what will actually work, and of course, a forecasting around what trends are going on, what other brands are doing, what other cross-functional industries are doing, because today no more a specific industry is competing against the same vendor within the same industry, right? They are actually competing against the experience what probably they would be getting maybe in booking an Ola or a Uber. So it's the competition is so massive. That's where a mix and the blend of all these aspects, it comes into picture, and it's very important for a marketing to take all those insights and then go ahead with it.
Thank you for that. Let me just take the same question to Dippak. You are, of course, and please do introduce yourself, but, you're in the business of customer acquisition in some form. And as you work with a wide range of, brands and customers, how exactly in a world of marketing where a lot is gut feel led, how do you actually convince a wider ecosystem of, the economics of it, the advantages of it, as well as some of the qualitative advantages, especially when it comes to consumers and consumer traction. So.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dippak. I basically run a mobile marketing company called Vserv. So basically, if we look, the question was that there is a lot of gut when you talk about marketing. Yeah. I would like to clarify the point out here that when it comes to digital marketing today, a lot of that is very, very measurable today. So right from I would say that sometimes in digital marketing, you are overwhelmed with a lot of measurement. It's a problem of more. It's not really a problem of less out there. If I'm a retailer, today, if I'm a retailer and I am looking at driving offline footfalls as one problem statement, okay, now you basically say that, what options do I have? I've traditionally used platforms like a newspaper. I do a big ad out there and I can directly see the impact of that on the weekend there. Now, is digital delivering that kind of impact? And can I measure that? Yeah. There I would say that for certain categories, I'm probably going to give a mixed response to that. We've seen for certain categories, especially where people are buying higher value products. I'll give an example, like Kaya is there as a brand and they're largely selling, laser hair removal products there. So the SKU unit there, or the purchase of that SKU is beyond a lakh of rupees. Okay. Now in that case, their expectation from digital was to generate a quality lead and then expect a certain number of people who generated leads to come and visit or book an appointment. And then from an appointment to a conversion. So there we were able to clearly see the funnel falling in place fully there. On the other side, so that is one example out there. On the other side, when I'm looking at, certain categories like fashion, okay, what happens today in fashion is, if you look at the consumer mindset, which when he's spending time on digital, when he's spending on Facebook, Insta, and we are targeting them on those platforms, he's at many times you're competing with a now mindset. That's the behavior which he's fed with. Okay, so there what happens is that basically the best model there is, okay, you take them to your online store and one can easily measure the user who's gone from Facebook to your platform. And then you're also able to measure that, okay, if he's made the purchase, if he's not made the purchase on that given day, you can also set up an attribution window and say, okay, at least in the next 20 days or 30 days, did this customer revisit and make a purchase? So in that sense, so one has to understand the category. Okay, in that sense, digital works. But if I were to say that on social platforms, if you're trying to just drive awareness and get people to the store, I've not seen that really. Okay, is this? So, am I audible? Yeah. So basically there, we've not seen that piece on social platforms. So, and similarly, if you had to now, if you look at again a power of digital and you say that, okay, fine, I'm in the category of shoes, I'm in the category of fashion, okay, Why not consider platforms like YouTube? Why not drive awareness on OTT platforms, on YouTube per se? Because then I can now, with the power of data, I can do mass personalization. I don't need to do, carpet bombing. I don't need a larger budget. I can even do with a budget of 2, 3, 5 lakh rupees. At those entry points, you can experiment. So clearly so one has to understand that if they're looking at digital, you also have to find your sweet spot. And videos do work there. And there again, there are ways in which people can really measure the lift on store footfall. So I think it's about understanding your category, your brand, and then understanding which digital marketing platform, along with what kind of data sets, come together for you.
Great. No, I think, the world of marketing, and, as BCG have worked with many companies, I think it's a very old adage which says that, what gets measured, will normally get done. It's quite true in the case of marketing. Having said that, I think, the single biggest challenge actually for marketers is to not just measure and see the data, but to believe it. That's a serious change management from conventional theories where you still relied a lot on what your gut instinct tells you. And even if the numbers are not great or they're very good, accepting them is a serious change journey that every organization undergoes as they adopt many of these changes. So in the spirit of at least having a good sniff check of where the current industry is, let me just take a step out and talk to other panelists around what do we expect this going forward. And let me pull in Ashwin here. I think the question here. Sorry, Ashim. Yeah, Ashim. So I think Ashim, I just wanted to check with you on what do you think are going to be the critical changes going forward? What in the digital marketing world is going to stay? Every day there's something new. There were web pages earlier, then Google came in, you had social come in, you now have e-commerce sites actually giving a particular ROI when it comes to digital investments. Mobile came in. Every day there is something different, something new with a slightly different consumer proposition and something with a different economics of reach. What do you project going forward? What's going to happen?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Just if you allow, I'll do a quick introduction of myself.
Please.
10-15 seconds. So my name is Ashim Patil. I am the founder of I-Tek RFID. We are a Tech Mahindra associate company and in the business of RFID system integration for more than 2 decades now. We are known popularly for our FASTag solutions in India, and we have more than 60% market share in tolling FASTags in India. In retail, we are already working for item level tagging, inventory solution, omni-channel solution, fitting room solutions, customer experience, smart mirror, and all these solutions for brands like Reliance Retail, Aditya Birla Retail, and for international brands like Superdry, Nike, and all. So that's about what we do. In retail, what we have been observing is with the D2C, direct to customer, the O2O is playing a very important role. O2O vice versa, online to offline and offline to online. And we using RFID are actually converging the convergence between the digital and the physical world. You are marketing everything digitally, but the fulfillment is of a physical product. Okay, so at the end of the day, whatever is happening online, the has to be done offline, and this is where our role comes into the picture by bringing in inventory visibility. You will be amazed to see how brands with multiple stores, hundreds of stores across the country or the globe, and the inventory, which is a very, very basic requirement, not even 70% or 75% accuracy is actually there in the inventory, and this is where it all begins for omni-channel fulfillment, because when an order is placed online to a particular store, the product cannot be found, and that's where it leads to the customer dissatisfaction and everything. So a lot of effort is being put in for online marketing and how to reach to the customer. But I think we need to set the house in order first with the offline store inventory management and identification and traceability to further reach onto the. Another important aspect is when we are talking of marketing and building the brand protection is very important while you are building it. And RFID, with our RFID solution, we are playing a very, very important role in brand protection. What has been observed is fake product being shipped from the online portal and the brands are not able to protect it, or original product being bought and a fake one is returned. So using RFID solutions, we are tracking that. So these are the issues with online and with brand protection, which we are all handling. What is there to stay is there are a lot of changes happening, but one thing which I would definitely say is what is there to stay is the customer expecting delivery on yesterday basis. So the customers are becoming more and more impatient. You order now, you click now, and you have the right content because of your digital marketing and digital platform and your digital presence. But the fulfillment has to be very, very fast and very, very quick. And this is the expectation. The digital marketing is a double-edged sword. You are marketing more and then you are raising the expectations, but you have to fulfill them. So this is there to stay definitely. And what is changing is basically new plumbing lines are coming into how you reach your customer, and more innovation is happening. I see so many startups coming up, and I don't want to name anyone right now, anyone in particular, but there are a lot of changes happening. But we should all be very, very careful while we are marketing about the brand protection and also our capability to fulfill the customer expectations. Thank you.
That's a good point, because marketing and proposition are two different things. I mean, your 10-minute proposition is different from digital marketing. I mean, one should draw that distinction. But I'd bring Shailesh, I think it would clearly bring you into this conversation, right? As you look at Intel and just a quick introduction to you. But what are you seeing as important trends, both consumer-led as well as from an operating perspective, in the world of digital marketing going forward?
Okay. Yes, it's a loaded question. So just a quick introduction. So I'm responsible for our global consumer industries at Intel, and what that means is retail, hospitality, entertainment, and banks, which is pretty much wherever there are consumers, and they're all interrelated. I think in a panel talked about what can we learn from banks, and banks can learn from retail, and that's the perspective we bring. So when we kind of look into future, I guess that's what you're asking me, right? Forward. So I go back a lot of time, a lot of trends in retail that have been happening, the new capabilities and the services, most of them have been grounded in the past. I look at like some of the really the smart merchants, not before the chains showed up, they were really good. And they were good because the demographics were smaller, the small towns, they knew people very well. And then it wasn't about selling something people didn't need, because shopping is a very emotional experience. And so marketing in that context is really, again, an emotional transaction. We're understanding them emotionally. So going back to connect and converse. So if you want to connect with someone, right, you have to build certain trust. And then you can serve them because I know something about them. So that's what the example of the merchants was, because they were connected with people and their demographics. And then they were able to serve them in a way where they were actually still enhancing their lifestyle. They're fulfilling a certain need in a way that actually still brought out that positive emotions. And I still see that in digital as well. So going back to the fundamentals. Now the difference is from the old model was that was not scalable. What digital and technology allows us to do is scale it. So now you're not dependent on that single merchant who's really savvy. How can we bring the same savviness, right, across the network? So now that gets into some of like, how do I go about doing it? Is this then understanding the shoppers and consumers, and then the individual, I guess everybody's talked about that too. And when we go in the future, I'm going to take it further. I think it's about the context as well. And what that means is like, you can know me as an individual, but my expectations, like you talk about expectations, and my context will change even throughout the day, depending on the environment I am or depending on what my needs are at that time. And I think that's the hard part right now, right? So the technologies, like whether it's the IoT or it's all other sensing capabilities like you talked about, I see the RFID as a sensor. It's like, how can we leverage all sorts of data and then build that trust with consumers that allows us to have that conversation? And that really gets down to this idea of it's not about collecting data, like you talked about. Data is not the problem. People have more data. We are not able to use it. So it's okay. I don't need a lot of data. And if I see the value as a consumer, I'm going to give more data. Sorry, I'm willing to share it. But it's the context, right? And you can incrementally get the data when you need to, rather than just keep collecting data. So the future, as I see this, is going to be the marketing which is in the context of that particular moment, not just individual, and truly connecting with the consumers in a way that builds that trust like we used to see in old days with the neighborhood merchants.
Well, I think hearing you say, and, especially when you talk about scalability and, brands historically, the single biggest advantage on why brands are valued is their appeal, right? And the appeal typically goes in the non-logical zone of a consumer's mind, right? You make emotional connects with brands. I think a lot of, there's just a lot which has been written about the power of brands and how consumers actually associate with them, just beyond a logo and a product. In that world, where brands actually mean so much, do we really think that digital brands can be created? And is that something which is real, and is that something that's going to play out over the next decade or so? We've seen the first emergence of many such brands. There was a reference to the emerging D2C brands. But is that something which will, really play out large and big over the next decade? And can that be done? So let me actually pull, a bunch of the brand owners here into saying that, will that happen? So maybe I'll have Amit, maybe your views on this. I'll request Namrata, you and Rafique, you as well, to share your thoughts on, can what you have created over decades, can that be created digitally in way shorter time?
So we are seeing a lot of brands that have now been launched only digitally. Now you have to remember that there are two kinds of brands. There is one, a product brand, and there's also a retail brand where you're offering a wide range of products in a particular manner. So for a product brand, yes, it would be possible to be able to sort of launch it digitally and try and make it popular by sharing the attributes and doing proper kind of marketing. But for a retail brand, the customer experience is extremely important. Even now we see even places, things like marketplaces, whether it's Amazon, Nykaa, Flipkart, they themselves are also opening retail stores, because at the end of the day, the brand really comes alive when it is directly being experienced by the customer physically. What you would call the touch and feel factor of the brand. So really a true brand will need a touch and feel factor. You can launch a brand digitally. A lot of brands have been launched digitally, but eventually they also find the need to be able to put some kind of retail presence to give it some kind of life or soul. Definitely it is far easier to be able to connect with the customer in a physical world, to be able to give them a good experience. And at the end of the day, you have to remember that a brand can only be created if it is serving a particular need and the experience is delighting the customer. It is also possible to delight a customer in a digital way. I know we have a lot of our managers who package children's shoes with a little bit of gift in it, or do it in a certain manner, or they try and surprise the customer even in the digital way when they're serving the customer and try and delight them. It's much easier to do it in the physical world. A customer comes in, he's trying out a new pair of shoes. His old shoes get polished and given to him looking like new. He gets totally surprised and delighted. So yes, a brand can be created digitally, but eventually to give it a heart and soul, it would need some physical presence. But it is definitely far easier to create a brand in the physical world because there the customer experience comes much better.
Amit, you want to take that, and then I'll take it
sure.
to Namrata.
Sure. So I think, like it or not, the pandemic has actually been around for much longer than we. Sorry, like it or not, the pandemic has actually been around for more than what we bargained for. So sadly, a few habits have actually set in, and a large part of the consumer base of purely offline stores has been lost. Having said that, is there merit in actually just going digital? Yes, brands can be made. But eventually, like even Rafique was mentioning, that if the overall experience has to be provided to the consumer, the right mix is with an omni approach. I think just to add maybe another dimension to the question that you asked, Rachit, is that how should a marketer then look at an omni-channel approach and what are the things that they should be looking at differently in the times to come, right? Purely in the pre-pandemic days, brands existed both digitally and offline as well. But the view of marketing was largely linear, right? Which is that offline marketing was aimed at offline consumers and digital marketing was largely aimed at digital consumers. Having said that, now because of the flux which we are facing because of the changing consumer habits, perhaps and something, Rajit, that you might relate to is that we'll need to have a 2x2 matrix, again, an ex-consultant in me speaking here as well, which is that apart from just offline for offline and digital for digital, what is it that we can do for offline, in the offline channels or the offline experience for our digital consumers, right? One of the examples that we ended up doing, because we firmly believe that grocery retail at least is a catchment area driven point, is when others are actually distributing price lists or discounting. What we ended up doing during the pandemic was actually distributing QR codes of our stores' digital assets, right? Another aspect that I'd want to talk about, which is futuristic in nature, but something that we are working towards, please don't hold it against me if is that largely globally there is a trend towards impacting the consumer journey in the digital space by replicating their journey in an offline store. I would beg to differ here because I think the Indian consumer is significantly different. For them, the touch, feel, and the nature of the product is actually significantly more important. So what will really add value to a digital consumer is that if we are able to provide him unpackaged stuff like be it fruit and vegetables, fresh, non-veg, etc., with the attributes that they are looking for their need state, right? So, and if we are able to actually double it up with AI, that is something that we are trying, that would be the real differentiator. So in case you can't really come down to a store, but you need an avocado which has to be ripe for making guacamole, that is something that you actually end up getting, rather than just betting on quick commerce and just hoping that you get it in the right shape or form that you want it in, right? Purely from a digital standpoint, I've already spoken about how it can impact in the in-store experience. But something that, again, we are trying out is from a collaboration standpoint, right? How can digital help in getting offline experience significantly better? One of the examples that we have is that in the shopping centers that we operate in, there are silos which are there. Consumers are coming in and the La Marche menus are actually placed there in case they want to order something that is delivered to them there, right? One of the other examples that I was discussing with one of the theater chains is that why can't actually somebody walk in, is watching a movie, in the interval shops for grocery from the tab which has been provided, and it simply gets delivered in the car park, right? Purely from a digital standpoint, I am a firm believer in the concept of content commerce. I genuinely believe that it's here to stay. Again, resonates well with our philosophy of getting the product experience to life. The only hitch is that from a tech standpoint, I think largely I have not come across a player who's providing content commerce as a service, and even content getting directly embedded onto, let's say, the websites of the brands. That, if can be done, will be a game changer because, again, to bring the complete cycle to life, the QR code of that content can be mapped onto the shelves of stores, and the entire cycle is then complete.
So I think I totally agree with Rafique Bhai on this, and even you in terms of the retail experience and the Indian consumer being very touch and feel relatively. And the only point I'd like to add to that larger point was that in India, entertainment options are very limited. So shopping is a very, very real entertainment option for the family at large. So whether online only brands, will be able to provide that kind of retail experience. Again, it's a very debatable topic, but I think the retail experience in terms of touch and feel will continue to be. So I'd not like to spend that much time on it because it is well covered by both the panelists here. But I think I'd like to touch on, the future of using digital media in terms of communicating for the offline business, the percent or the segment of the dollar share, the dollar spent on the marketing, on communicating with the consumers through digital media. Though offline media has had a significant presence across the country and the world in the last many years, and it's always had a lion's share. But stats suggest that, TV has a 850 odd million penetration, newspaper has approximately 450 odd million penetration, internet has 700 odd million penetration across the country, and smartphone is 500 million. So digital media is becoming significant and huge today. Some salient features that we have experienced, which is driving this digital communication, has been, in terms of content. Today, the consumer today doesn't like direct communication. They like very subjective and very perceptive communication. Today, hashtag contests or viral videos or, retweets take a larger share in the media. Today, like, comment, and share, is a mechanism to judge the success of a campaign. Earlier, companies used to release ads where, they used to judge GRPs and TRPs to judge the success of a campaign. Today, the kind of conversation that happens around it digitally is what, helps you judge the success of a campaign. In terms of, content, there's so much rapid content coming around. In terms of either social media, influencer, having a monologue on the gram, or, a YouTube content creator trying to integrate product or service as part of their creation, or a series of bursts of celebrities talking the same consistent language of, quirky communication, communicating the brand. So what we have learning from a D2C brand, we can possibly replicate on an offline brand to be able to do the same and achieve the same kind of success. Video has become huge. Today, brands, the biggest asset is video. Short form videos have become very popular. The vernac has become very, very important, because within this Bharat, there are multiple Bharats, and with the democratization of internet, a lot of people are getting the voice in this country. Influencers, today Rajus and Rashmis of the world are becoming larger influencers than, many of the A-listers, and the ROI works out much better, because today consumers relate to them better, the way they communicate. And today the Gen Zs and the millennials are very perceptive in their way of thinking. They only change their consumer behavior only if they relate to the person talking, because there's a lack of trust. A lot of people talking, a lot of things, selling a lot of things. So D2C is definitely a platform for promoting products, as Rafique bhai said, but we can use what they are doing effectively in trying to promote the same retail experience.
Okay, so we have about 12 minutes left on the clock, and in the spirit of making 2x2s, there is an axis of personalization, customization, micro-marketing, all that we've spoken about. And there's another axis which is actually around saying consumers and people being a little bit more skeptical on the use of data, especially their personal data and privacy. It's clearly something where, perceptions are important, but more importantly, I think, the industry hasn't done a great job of actually driving, the right perceptions around security. So let me bring in, a couple of my panelists here with requestingly short answers on this fairly, tight topic. And what would be your take going forward? Is there an and or is there an or? Will there be, as more and more data comes to great use, will it come with a compromise on privacy? Or at the end of the day, will the consumer's choice of having personal data completely secure at the cost of lack of, second order personalization, where will the world play out going forward? So let me actually ask, Shailesh and Vandana, if you could, give your thoughts on this topic.
Okay, I can get started. I think it's an and, it's not an or. Going back again, I think the previous theme, I see trust and value. I think most of us as consumers, I think we all sign up for loyalty programs. There are people, they give all sorts of data if there's a value exchange happening. Where we have concerns is where my data is being used without my consent, A, or it's being used where I'm not getting any value, but the people connecting data, whether it could be third parties or it could be the direct, they are getting value out of it. So it really comes down to, at least from my perspective, is the trust and the value exchange. Is we have to make sure that we are creating value and that value is very well understood, and then make sure we are protecting the data and not misusing it. I think if those two elements are there, I'm simplifying it, but that trust we have to build, and that goes back to the brand conversation earlier. The brands that are famous, the brands with which consumers connect are the brands people trust. And I think the same applies here as well, right? It's going to be about trust and value.
I think you've well said. It's all about trust and value, what a brand creates, and for consumers to trust them and to have their data to be secured. There are two perspectives here. One from the organization perspective, who are responsible to take care of the security platforms, and the other is from the consumer's perspective, who are basically the impulsive buyers. How do they relate? So again, to your point, Rachit, it's the emotional connect what a consumer is trying to have with the brand. That emotional connect will talk about whether I trust the brand to hold my data or not. And for a brand, it is very much important to create or to maintain that trust intact. Now, to your second part, where you said that who will, should brand be able to monetize this kind of data? Or should it be in the hands of the consumers, that what is the usage of their own personal data whether it is being used correctly or not. I have seen some of, at least in the West, there are certain companies who are actually offering this as a service for the consumers to have a right on their data. They provide that right to the businesses, to the brands, in terms of the usage. Because today, when we try to go on the website, if we are Googling anything, what literally happens is the cookies, it just gets downloaded on your laptop, and you automatically start getting ads around Facebook, on Facebook, on Instagram for a particular requirement what you've put, right? So this is again a data of your own data, that what you really require, what you're looking out in the market to buy. This again has to be a right which needs to be given to a particular brand, whether they can utilize or they can throw this particular ads or not. Today, if we think about it, it's all Facebook and Google who are actually there when we talk about the advertisements, right? The Google ads and everything. Now, the moment you shift this power from those biggies to the consumers, then you will see that change, that dynamics coming in. But this definitely thought of changing and giving that right to the consumers is resonating. It will definitely come to our world as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's largely where the Western world is also thinking. I'm not very sure whether the Eastern world thinks that way, because that's really not the way Eastern retail models have been built. Be it in China or some of the other countries. Though of course I think what both of you are saying is exactly the way the West has gone. And let me sure.
I just like to add a point to that conversation. Basically, yes, over and above, when you talk about data usage, you're also talking about consent. Very important. So consent and transparency are two key pieces which consumer needs to really be comfortable with. So if as a customer, I end up going to Amazon or I am going to Khadim's website, as long as the platform is clearly calling out, that look, you coming and spending time out here, we are going to collect usage data on our platform, but we are going to do that for what purpose? We are going to do that so that next time when you come and visit our website, we are able to give you a better and a personalized experience. Yeah. So I think if as long as the customer is clearly informed, and we spoke about value, right? Like loyalty is like a reward, you know, and now in today's world, giving consumers great experience for a customer is also a reward. You know, so the customers really care for quality experience, which brands strive for. So I think as long as that is very clearly communicated, consumers will be fine with that. And there should also be a very clear, you know, opt-out feature there, right?
But the truth of the matter is that data privacy is a myth. Today, our location data, our browsing data, everything we do and see and read, everything is being monitored and being used and probably being abused without our knowledge. So I think it is a myth, and I think with whatever the power these big companies have built, it will be very difficult for it to be reversed.
Well, I think I've done a good job as a moderator that at exactly less than 5 minutes left is when, you know, we've heard something which is, you know, there's an old adage which says, right, again, that the three most abused terms in the world are actually strategy, inclusion, and the third is data privacy. So you know, you will always hear everybody being fairly politically right about what to say, but you know, in terms of, you know, true practice, you will find very often it's not really hitting the right notes. But I think you know, we are almost at the end of this, and I'll just leave to the last question. And I think I'll pull Mr. Patil and Sanjay both into this conversation. I think it's the last point, which was around saying, you know, 3 years back when you know, when RLS didn't happen, or you know, the COVID didn't, and you know, COVID kept in, we couldn't have it maybe you know, last year, couple of years. But look, everybody's back with vengeance, right? Latest statistics show travel is back with vengeance, shopping is back with vengeance. Fundamentally, you know, as we stretched the band is actually coming back to where it is. So do we actually expect that many of these things that we spoke about today, be it around digital marketing, be it around you know, the consumer and the customer journey going very heavily online, do you see a lot of it unwinding, or do you see it actually, you know, further not accelerating, but at least keeping the road that it has?
So I think nothing is going to go back to its original self. People have got used to online, whether they are for value-centric propositions or for the convenience, they are going to stay there. And also, the fact of the matter still remains that in India specifically, shopping is one family activity that people really want, they desire, and probably that's one of the few things that families do together. And, you know, shopping online kind of promotes isolation and being on your own from that perspective. So I think it's going to be going back to, you know, physical shopping in a much more, you know, people are going to really value physical shopping more than what they had earlier. And having said that, they would stay online for many things that they feel are urgent or probably are more necessity-led. But wherever the experience matters and time spent with the family matters, I think that's where probably physical shopping will come into play in a much more positive and a much more happier manner.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I agree to what you say. I really don't think that online and offline are competing. Rather, online is complementing and rather acting as a catalytic to the offline sales. So offline is, as Rafique bhai said, it's the experience, and also now because of online, it is more on the fulfillment side also. So your offline store at the nearest pin code, instead of your DC or your warehouse, is acting as an online order fulfillment center. What is changing because of the digital convergence in which we are working is, you know, when we are talking about marketing as a subject for conversing and communicating and the content and everything, the go-to market for the next season, you know. So there are tools because of digital convergence wherein the offline shoppers along with online, you know what exactly you are clicking, where your journey is. But in offline, within a store, it is very difficult to track the journey. So what all is attracting an eyeball and going to a fitting room? And what is the conversion analytics of that? So this is again fueling your online. So the online, offline, what I'm trying to say is complementing each other, and it is definitely not competing with each other. That's what I would like to add.
Great. So with the 27 seconds on the clock, just a quick set of closing comments. In BCG, we've done a fair amount of research on Indian consumers over the last couple of decades, right? And I think one of the biggest conclusions we've drawn is that Indian consumers get excited and are quick to react to stimuli, but change a little slower than what we actually expect them to. So as we will see many of these trends come to play, none of them will actually play out tomorrow. I think they will all take their own sweet time to play out. And I think the supply side to define the economics of how a lot of the trends and a lot of these investments that we spoke about is going to be an important one to keep an eye out. With that, can I just thank the panelists here? I mean, it was an extremely engaging conversation. Thank you very much for your perspectives and your presence. Do we have time for any audience questions, or shall we just call it off? Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time.